What's going on, everybody? It's Frito here for Your Overwatch. It's finally upon us. We're going to find out more about what they're doing with Overwatch 1. With all the talk about PvE, it had felt like they abandoned the PvP aspects of the game, but just this week, Keller, aka Uncle Aaron, aka Aaron, made his premiere as the lead developer with a really short developer update announcing that next week, Thursday, May 20th at 12 p.m. Pacific time, we're going to be seeing a live stream on Overwatch 2 PvP changes, which is kind of the Overwatch 1 2.0 version of the game, right? After that, there will be a Reddit AMA you can take part in on the 24th. So there's going to be a lot of discussion and news about how they're changing the main game of Overwatch. Based on what they said, you can expect new maps, but perhaps more insight into things they didn't talk about back at BlizzCon. Are they, in fact, going to 5v5 or any of those role reworks they discussed? Are they going into effect? Who knows? And it's all still a work in progress, but we'll get a better idea of what they have cooking there. They want Overwatch PvP to be perhaps even more competitive. A statement that's been kind of brushed under the rug from the community, I think, not realizing the significance of that claim. But as everybody knows, we should expect new systems and features for the live game as big as anything they've ever added to be coming up probably at the anniversary. Once that was announced, I've been looking to your guys' comments as well as discussions we've had on Twitter, talking to my other creator friends, trying to rack our brains to think what could be coming out as the new systems and features. Perhaps a stats system overhaul. They have a partnership with IBM. Really, I want far more detailed stats than what we have. We're still working on the gold medal system from week 1 of the game, which was kind of DOA as far as I'm concerned. As for its usefulness for competitors, it feels good as a casual player maybe to get a gold star for contributing, but instead of seeing things like our objective time, I want to know where the team's resources went. Who's getting the nano boosts, the blue beams, the Zarya bubbles? That informs most of your decision making. And if we had a scoreboard that was detailed like that, even if it's just after the game, it would make the community's improvement and understanding of what's important in the game a lot more streamlined, I think. That's one we know is coming eventually in Overwatch. Another suggestion is the cosmetics overhaul, which we anticipate for Overwatch 2. They've already spoke about it tangentially, saying that there'll be more customization, more itemization, as opposed to one full-out skin per character, which I kind of like, but you can see how having more customization options gives them more opportunity to have a lot more cosmetics, especially when you need to unlock a pair of gloves or something by doing a challenge. It perhaps is less taxing from a design point of view. And of course, we expect Overwatch 2 to have a lot of RPG replayability. With that cosmetics overhaul, I anticipate more RPG progression for PvP, at the very least the casual modes. I think the game pretty badly needs more reasons to keep playing it besides just rank. The one I said in a previous video is a clans or clash style tournament system. They've talked about clans for years now. Last year, they were more optimistic about it, meaning that a year later to today, it seems kind of likely that it could be coming out. A timed tournament style system would solve a lot of problems that I'm about to go into about how ranked is just not working and they made it worse. Okay, don't get ahead of myself. Other things we can think of, crossplay, a classic Overwatch style system, other things like that, a map editor perhaps. But other than that, it's hard to find things that seem like surefire bets to help the game while also fitting the description that Keller gave us, that it's as big as anything they've ever added. So that really narrows it down, I feel like. But of course, as we're guessing along, let us know in the comment section down below if you have any bright ideas of what you think it's going to be so you can call it ahead of time. But that's likely where it's going. And the one thing that I haven't mentioned yet that the game pretty badly needs is a ranked overhaul. Ranked mode has been abysmal and is probably the sole reason why the online gaming community is so sour on the Overwatch experience. The first solution that I would like to see is really buffing Quickplay. There just isn't enough reasons for players to go into Quickplay, and I think trying to take some of the players who reluctantly play ranked due to the fact that it gives you gold guns, or it's the only way to really get a sense of your pecking order in the community. You have to go there to get the rank icon just to know where you are. A lot of players play it just for those items, and I wish that instead they could find out those types of things just from playing Quickplay. As an example, if you're the type of player that only wants to play one hero just to see it have a number on your player card, why not it be optional that you turn on your leaderboard status in Quickplay for different accolades? Maybe I'm like the 5,000th best Junkrat in Quickplay based on some stat or metric. Why, in order to show off where I rank or stack up to the community, I have to go take that hero into ranked where he may or may not be good or a detriment to the team, really annoying to play for my teammates? I think a significant minority, not majority, but a significant minority of players would still just play Quickplay if it somehow gave them feedback to how they stack up. And again, it would be an optional thing that you can turn on to show what your MMR is. Because by the way, this is the reason why Quickplay and ranked always feel so similar to me, basically. Almost the same thing, is that Quickplay has MMR anyway. So the matchmaking is just wider in terms of you'll play with a wider scope of SR ranges. And of course, it's not intended to be as competitive, so players don't approach it as sweaty most of the time, but in my experience, they're almost always trying to win. It's more likely they might go AFK or play off meta heroes, but it's not like a significant change, so much so that blending the two ideas would like be some big shock. I think quite the opposite, actually. We've been saying it for years on this channel at this point now, and a lot of content creators seem to just be agreeing with me more and more each day. But if you want to keep loving Overwatch, the best way to do it is to play Quickplay, which is where it feels like the game was designed to work at. So that's all well and good. Making the game better for casual players should be step one, because there's just more of them. But if you're a player who wants a competitive experience, like I did for so many years and still do, the only option you have in-game at the moment is ranked. The only problem is ranked is not very good. So let's get into why that's the case and how they may go about trying to fix it. The very first thing I should have said, probably should have said already, because there's going to be a flood of comments saying this, alt accounts are a problem. I'm worried about this because it seems like Blizzard really likes to tout the number of how many sales they still have. And meanwhile, all of us who understand how these numbers work are scratching our head like, oh, you have 10 million monthly active users. How many of those are alt accounts? We don't really know, and it doesn't seem like Blizzard wants to be forthcoming on that information, because it may significantly decrease their register players. And any attempts to fix the alt account smurf problem may reduce that number de facto, because if you don't feel like you need an alt account to play the game effectively or get something out of it or combat the fact that everyone else has an alt, then everyone may alt account less. There isn't surefire ways to fix this indefinitely, but especially if there's going to be like timed tournament modes that are more serious than the ranked mode, I'd see no problem with having cell phone verification for that mode. But I think other routes they need to go is reduce the reasons why people legitimately want an alt account. It's too hard to play with your friends. Seeing as in the ranked system, groups get matched based on their average rating together anyway, why not give them a separate rating for when they're grouping? A team rating, even into the flex queue system. Why does everyone have to have their individual rating? We'll get more into this with how other games deal with the whole rating system, but having one size fits all for SR doesn't make sense with the way they match you. People want alt accounts because the off-roll SR placements are so bad that they legitimately should probably get an alt account if you want to play ranked on a new role, because as it stands now, when you hit that flex queue button to try to get that priority pass, well, you're going to be put on roles that maybe you've never played before at SR levels that aren't appropriate. A general theme for my feedback on this is that we need the system to be more adaptive to the type of game we have. Those off roles, to me, I don't see why they shouldn't be treated more so like new accounts as opposed to bias so heavily towards your main role, which may or may not indicate your general level on an off roll. The results really vary on this. In our group, SVB, you may know from some of his most popular content where he was a GM tank that went in to play DPS on an alt account and gotten gold. Eventually worked up to plat, and I think he's probably most comfortable around diamond right now. But on his main account, when he finally, after never playing DPS on his main ever placed his DPS count, he got 3,800 SR, higher than his main role of tank. And what's even more hilarious is that number is higher than my or Nathan's DPS. So what this means is SVB has to either guard that SR with his life and barely play on it just to hold on to that, or if he wants to play DPS, he's gonna have to lose so much SR until he gets to what is likely a comfortable place for him. And that's just nonsense, right? Why does it have to do that? And the truth is, because alt accounts are so prevalent, the SR bands or sections of SR that hold some weight start to get blurred a little bit. And although you generally will be where you should be if you play long enough, the journey to do so, as well as the meaning of where you should be, changes quite significantly, especially because the game balance changes so dramatically and the game is so competitive and difficult to play, you may not actually be the same rank on the necessary heroes in a given role, or it may fluctuate wildly based upon how the game gets balanced. I've seen many times where a character like Hanzo gets the Storm Arrow buff that lets him delete things. All of a sudden you see when that buff comes in on their profile, they've gained 500 SR since that change. So that's why I think from season to season, they really should consider some sort of soft reset or seasonal decay. The weekly decay they used to have, they got rid of because it made you feel like you had to keep playing. But I think it's pretty over the top that I can have alt accounts that have been in GM for literal years now that never will decay. What if that was my only account? There are players like that where they take a break, come back to their one copy of Overwatch. This is how they're supposed to play the game. And because it doesn't decay, all of a sudden now they have to play much harder games than they're used to. Now, that might require us to change our perspective because on one hand, players really don't want to have the loss aversion of, oh, you're taking my rank away. It didn't feel good when it was week to week, but it can't be I hold on to it infinitely. There's got to be a middle ground between that, right? And this is the problem when a ranked mode needs to be both a progression system as well as a matchmaker. It never feels good to lose a rank you feel like you earned, and this is why a game like Valorant has done a good job with having multiple tiers of ranked progression, where there is a visible matchmaking rank, but there's also a leaderboard, and it also has ways of displaying what your peak rank was. That's a more accurate representation of your ranked journey and makes it feel less bad when you get on a lower SR. Because maybe, you know, when your best hero was meta, you achieved up a rank or two higher, right? Then you can hold on to that and feel good about it, as opposed to feel terrible because really, the only thing anybody really cares is what are you ranked right now? They'll go back in your history and see how low your ranks used to be, but we should be able to glorify our achievements as opposed to be pushed into our face our failures. And I'm not an expert on Valorant system, but I think the difference here is that in Overwatch, you do have a invisible MMR. I think from what I understand it in Valorant, they kind of make that more visible. So you're working towards going higher on the leaderboard, but your MMR is based on your performance a bit more. And then your peak obviously is what you achieved. And between the three of those, you get a much better picture of where this player's at. And it doesn't feel so bad when there is the small resets that they do. So as an example, your MMR may more or less stay the same if you go dormant as a player and take a break, but you don't keep your leaderboard standing. You have to actually go out and play to get that. But if there's soft resets of some kind, then if you take a break and come back, maybe your MMR gets downshifted more rapidly in order to adjust to how the meta is different or whatever. That would be a nice thing to have. And that's the kind of system that I think we deserve to have in Overwatch, especially with how complicated and difficult the game is. Ranked mode is popular. A lot of players love it for your ability to drop in and have a more competitive experience than just quick play. But I think ultimately the thing that's going to propel Overwatch as a competitive game long term is establishing how competitive it is and take that seriously and give us a more serious ranked mode that is one step advanced, that feels modern and fits how the game actually works. And that's why I'm most excited for a feature that might be coming now, maybe Overwatch 2, a tournament mode that's similar from Clash from League of Legends. The benefit of a tournament mode in Overwatch is that it's very flexible and fits the format of how Overwatch should should be played better. The reason for that is the Overwatch ranked experience we have right now is intended to work game to game, which is to say it's trying to make the most accurate match right now, while also trying to chart your progress over time. In a tournament system, if you lose, you go to the lower section of the bracket or immediately go down a tier, because if you're not playing a strategy up to snuff, you just lose. Whereas in the ranked system as we have now, almost all players are kind of just floating along, not really learning, and that's what gives it the sense of not really being competitive, as well as letting for players to get to higher ranks, not really learning the game. You might learn a couple tricks in order to win in ranked or have higher APM, but you're not really learning how to be a good Overwatch teammate. And that works if it's intended to be Quickplay Plus, but it doesn't work for a lot of players that are expecting the system to feel more competitive. And on top of that, just think about it. You watch some Overwatch League matches, it's common for blowouts on a map like one team goes with one strat, like McCree on Dorado. The other team plays Ashe with a Mercy. And for 4 minutes, the McCree team gets full held, the Ashe dominates, and the, team that may have been the champion of the league for 2 seasons has to go back to the drawing board and figure out how they're going to adjust and change for the next map. In the Overwatch ranked experience, you play one map at a time, you get the wrong matchup, you instantly lose, you lose that SR, whether you could have adapted to that situation or not. Overwatch maps are made to be like one-off instances, so you don't really make that competitive until you play a series. So because of this, in ranked, in order to make it work for you and become accurate, you have to put a lot of play data in and have a lot of matches where you kind of just lose at the loading screen, which used to be worse before roll queue, if you can imagine it. Anybody who played open queue when it was the standard format made like 90% of ranks nearly unplayable, where you weren't even playing Overwatch most of the time. Although that had benefits for higher tier players who had shorter queue times, like now DPS players have to wait forever if you're a high ranked player, but I think for the mass player base, open queue was a travesty. So roll queue helped that out a bit, but the way the game's designed, where certain heroes are better than others at different jobs, counterpicking is still going to play a big impact on whether your team wins or loses. And it might not even just be the pick, but the play style of your team. Like, if the enemy plays Pharah Mercy and you don't pocket your DPS properly, how are you going to expect them to kill the Pharah Mercy? You just lose. Or if your tanks get outplayed by a May every fight, you're at like such a massive disadvantage to win that game, that although there are tricks you can do in order to overcompensate for your team playing incorrectly, that oftentimes teaches you bad habits that makes you win in the ranked environment, but perhaps makes you a worse player at Overwatch, the competitive game, where ideally you should be playing around setting up the right thing, as opposed to overcompensating for your team doing the wrong thing, which is what so much of the ranked experience is. And that's what's important to me, and important for me to get out as a message on our platform, because I watch so many streamers that are really isolated in their experience, kind of missing the average player's perspective. But as an example, I rate features like roll queue and the priority pass system as a massive boost to the game of Overwatch. I think it's amazing. But if you're like a top 500 DPS player who only wants to play DPS, you're like, well, my queue times just got longer, so the game experience felt worse for them. But I think what we're gonna find is when you have timed tournament modes as the real upper echelon experience for the highest rank, it's gonna be good for every rank as well. It's gonna be a fun way for you to try to get a taste of that actual competitive, no matter how skilled or unskilled you are. But especially for them, the benefit of it being an event is that everyone gets on to play at the same time. I think that is the secret sauce people seem to forget with all of this. That so much of the problem of queue times is that just players aren't on at the same time. Whereas if you put a time frame on it and it becomes an event, well, then it's like trials for Destiny, or an Overwatch League tournament, or, you know, what I hope will be a commonplace thing for Overwatch, a reason to come back to the game, right? Think how cool that would be for any tier of play. I think this can apply if you're at all interested in this. You can play quick play casually, you can play ranked for a slightly more serious environment, but as soon as it starts failing you, like it's bound to, just based on what I've already discussed, you at least have something to look forward to every week or whatever interval it's at to play with your friends to get that extra serious experience. When you make these one-off events, the rating you can get from them can shift far more quickly, because if they're just weekly, for example, maybe you can get a new rating for every single event they have. If I want to attempt to go commander mode and get a team of golds and go into a tournament and see what we can get as these one-off events, not only would that be a better experience, but it hurts nothing and just gives us the gameplay we want. Maybe one week you try one strat, one week you try another, and as the meta changes, that immediacy, instead of the SR system trying to like judge you once and for all and say, well, this is where you belong, despite that being like an ever-changing thing anyway, well, testing your mettle up against competition, that's the way it should be. You should have to actively work towards that. And I think if we do get a system that's similar to these aspects that I'm talking about, we'll realize that, yeah, Overwatch Ranked, it's nice for Quickplay Plus, but if you really want to test your ability to play the game, you'll try to find a group of friends where you can cover each other's weaknesses and play the comps you want to play. And that means we can build players' interest into the game of Overwatch long term. Where now, just with Ranked, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. The game quality never really increases. You don't understand, Frito, because you play at Masters and GM, your teammates are actually good. No, not really. They're just more skilled, right? They're not like better teammates. That's not what the rank system does. And that's a bit of a brutal reality check, I think, for players. And eventually when they start to realize that and they do improve, you watch your guides, you grind your execution, you get better as a player, and then you go up a rank or two or multiple and you're like, well, the game quality is not even better. And that's like the sad, depressing state of Overwatch that I think was the core for it spiraling down to be much less of a success as a competitive game as it could be. But between the good balancing, the hero shooter meta, the game's about explosions, map control, making plays, there's very little pure cheese in the game, or at least, you know, it's cheesy for a hero shooter, but everyone's got some cheese, right? It's balanced cheese. The perception of the game, I think, would be entirely different. In any case, we just need to make interacting with these modes more fun, mainly. I perhaps should have used that word repeatedly throughout this, but what we're kind of talking about trying to do is remove some of the barriers of fairness, quote unquote, that Blizzard sets up, like, oh, you can't group of friends, that's unfair. Oh, we want to make sure that all the SRs are as accurate as possible, so we'll boost some players here, or we'll match groups against groups. They do all sorts of things to try to change the immediate fairness, but that doesn't necessarily enable the competitive integrity. In fact, in so many cases, I think it removes it and just robs the competitive integrity altogether, as opposed to my team versus your team, who wins? Oh, you beat me, you go up a tier. That's simple. Okay, guys, that's all my thoughts about the rank system. I'm looking forward to what they show us next week. I'm hoping there's good news that addresses some or all or many of these problems. I do think that would breathe a new life into Overwatch. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave it with a like. It really does help us out and let us know that you're enjoying the content. And if you haven't already, click subscribe and be sure to hit the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos go live. Link to the description is our Twitter. We tweet out news updates and dank memes. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. We'll see you guys next time.